I work in something called revenue management for a company named Mondelez. They make products like Oreo cookies, Chips Ahoy, Ritz crackers, and I'm a revenue manager for them. And not too dissimilar with real estate, like basically I help them utilize their money and make more money with it and sell more cookies.
Welcome to the REI Partners Meetup. We're your hosts, Matt Morrow and Richard Clark. This is a place where knowledge is shared, friends collaborate, as we help each other to succeed in both our real estate and personal goals. We are a group of like-minded individuals from across the country who are here to help and support each other. Investors, realtors, entrepreneurs, and many others contribute to providing diverse and practical content for our events, especially our mentors who enjoy helping new and experienced investors in their journeys. Thanks for joining. We hope you enjoy the show and encourage you to bring others who may find value as we invest in our collective future.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining REI Partners January 2023 monthly meetup. And today we have Tom Mui for our guest speaker. And REIPartners.net. If you don't know our web address, check it out and sign up for our meetups once a month. And Matt and I work together. Matt's covering the eastern coast of the United States. I'm covering west of Harrisburg, out here near Pittsburgh. I operate a private equity company working one-on-one with investors to develop managed portfolios. As many of you are investors here on the call, feel free to ask questions. This is a meetup for all, and we have people here just getting started, as well as people that has experience. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us, and looking forward to the discussion today. I do have a piece at the end that I want to go over with everybody, just kind of clue you in on if any of you know what a clue report is. I want to share with you what that is and how to manage that. It's very similar to a credit report, but it has to do with your personal identity and has to do with insurance and underwriting. So I will speak on that towards the end of the call. And with that, I'll toss it over to you, Matt, and we get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Rich. All right, let's start over with intros. We'll just go with Ryan Legat since you're on the top of my list here. You're on mute, buddy.
Yeah, helps if you can hear me. Okay.
There you go.
My name's Ryan. I'm a real estate investor from Allentown, Pennsylvania. I'm currently working on getting my real estate license so I can work on the investor side. Just looking forward to talking with everybody, hearing their experiences. I really like hearing about people that, have had great success with real estate from the ground up. It really inspires me. So thanks a lot for being here.
Awesome. Thanks. Ryan, friend, are you on? I see you popping in there.
Yes. Hi guys. How you doing? My name is Ryan. I'm just getting home from work, so I'm trying to get my animals situated. I am currently an aspiring investor. I would love to get into multifamily properties in the Allentown area. The first part of my master plan was to prove to myself that I could actually budget, and I did it. So I'm really starting to try to figure out what I'd like to do as far as building my own brand, coming up with my own company. I just actually also started some real estate license classes, and they've been awesome. I really enjoy hearing everybody's story, like Ryan said, just to kind of see how they got started. It's amazing how many people from all walks of life have been successful in real estate. So I'm just here to learn and see what I can do.
Ryan's our video editor, and he'll be the one that puts together the stuff for the website and YouTube and all that. So thanks, buddy, for doing that. You're a lifesaver.
My pleasure. My pleasure, man.
All right. Ken.
Hi, I've been retired for about a year now, and I recently purchased with my wife and Matt a 5-unit. And so I'm very new to this, but I'm here to learn.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to be related to Matthew, would you?
He may or may not be my dad.
I'm his dad.
Just curious. Awesome.
He's
Brian.
a good kid.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Matt's awesome.
Brian Walter, you on?
My name is Brian Walter. I'm a wholesaler in Allentown. So always just trying to network and learn about different types of real estate investments. Thanks for having me.
And Dat?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Dat, aspiring investor in Allentown. I connected with Matt via Bigger Pockets, and we just can kind of sifting through what's there in terms of multifamily. I'm happy to learn from everyone. Thank you.
Awesome. I think that's everybody on. And I always forget to introduce myself, but everybody here knows me because I'm usually the one that puts together. But my name's Matt, multifamily mixed use investor in the Allentown area. Started a few years ago as a kind of a second career because I got terrified. I didn't want to, lose everything if I couldn't fly airplanes anymore. And it's the absolute best decision I ever made. It's life-changing, connected with all you guys, and the outreach and the support of real estate is, hands down. And you're going to hear a cool story tonight from Tom and several of the guys on the call. They've made their living in real estate, and real estate actually saved Ryan's whole life here from going upside down because he had a 2-unit and it cost him nothing to live right now, even though he is unemployed as we speak. He is
Very true. Yes.
He is kicking ass all because of a good decision. So I'm super passionate about real estate and I love everything about it. You guys all know that though. But without further ado, Tom, thank you so much for spending your evening with us and most of your last weekends with John and myself out here looking for property. But if you can, give your little intro, share your screen, whatever you got to do, and we all look forward to it.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Matt, and thanks for having me. I am honored to be invited to this talk, guys. I'm like you guys, I don't consider myself an expert, but one thing I have dabbled in quite a bit in is actually short-term rentals and midterm, what I like to call midterm rentals. And I like to kind of just share what some of my success and failures are for the last 5-6 years. And like some of you guys, I connected with Matt through Bigger Pockets. So it's kind of cool to see that Bigger Pockets sort of forming its own, subset group, right? In specific metro areas. And this seems like a very interesting spot, Allentown. A little about myself. My full-time gig, I work in something called revenue management for a company named Mondelez. They make products like Oreo cookies, Chips Ahoy, Ritz crackers, and I'm a revenue manager for them. And not too dissimilar with real estate, basically I help them utilize their money and make more money with it and sell more cookies. That's really what that is. And I somehow take that, honestly, and it's very applicable to real estate. I take that and I look at real estate not just as a tool to get to financial freedom, but real estate is very interesting because there's so many creative ways to utilize it and extract what I call real estate arbitrage, which is try to find opportunities and find areas that no one's looking at to basically get above market rent. And I'll share with you some examples that I have done in the past, particularly when I was living in Chicago. And then I have a little, presentation for you guys here. This was an old deck I put together many years ago. So I apologize if some of it seems a little outdated, but I think some of it is very relevant to what we're talking about today. And also, I will be sharing some actual numbers from when I was running the opportunity. Some may surprise you and some may shock you. So either way, I just want to share the full truth of it. But before we go on to that, I'm just curious, how many of you have heard of Airbnb, used Airbnb, or currently run an Airbnb? I'm just really curious. Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, I'll do it. Can't remember.
All right, great. Then in that case, that give me an idea exactly how to introduce this, right? Because it looks like there's going to be a varying amount of experiences here. But let me explain what Airbnb is for those who don't know. How do I share screen here? This is different from Teams, actually.
It'll be a circle or a square share screen button in the middle of the bottom.
Okay, there it is.
There you go.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yep. And then once you do presentation mode, it should go Perfect. There you go.
Okay, is that full screen?
Yep, you are.
Okay, cool. All right, so Airbnb basically is as it started out back in 2008, it was basically a platform for what we call hosts, so people who have access to a room or a house of some sort, and to offer it online for guests essentially, and making turning the hotel industry on its head really, making it more free to the people. And so as it sort of evolved in more recent years, Airbnb has introduced 3 other platforms: Airbnb Experience, Airbnb Adventure, Airbnb for Work. And these are things you guys should think about if you guys are interested in getting into Airbnb, because these are different ways you can differentiate yourself from everyone else. And give you an example of like what an Airbnb experience is. Sometimes when you book like a room, it might come with a chef, and they might offer a cooking class in addition to like you staying there wherever you may be. So that's just like an example of how people are, taking a very simple, basic idea and pushing the envelope to extract, more than just like a bed to sleep on, like something more, like more of an experience, more of a lifestyle, if you will. I always tell people this, like before they want to jump into Airbnb, like they should really consider these 5 things before they do it, because I'll tell you what, I love that I did it for 5 years. I was a super host for 5 years, and I will tell you right now, like I have a 2-year-old at home. I will not be doing Airbnb for the near future because it is very time consuming and it is very hands-on. However, I will say if I was single and I had all the time in the world, I would totally be doing Airbnb today. So those of you who have the time to do it, I would consider that. But even if, say, for example, like, you have a busy schedule, but you still want to extract like, above market rent, there are other strategies you can use to do that without having high turnover. But let me talk about the location real quick, because this is something that kind of screwed me over. Like looking back, everything is 2020 in hindsight, but looking back, right? This is going to be cliche and you hear it all the time, but this is so true. Location is everything, guys. Like, especially, and I can only speak to my experience in Chicago, but it is so important to be near a subway line if you're ever playing in the metro area, especially in somewhere like Chicago. The difference between what you can make like just a couple of blocks away from metro line to being next to a metro line is thousands of dollars. So I highly recommend, making sure that you're either near a transportation or something of particular interest, like an airport or like a resort or something like that, depending on where you guys play. The next thing that's really important too is the strategy. Now, I had this flip before. Before it was do the research, then create a strategy. I actually flipped this because I truly believe like you really need to think about what your strategy and your game plan is going, like what your goal is to get out of Airbnb. If it is straight up I just want to maximize my cash on cash return, then short term is the way to go here, but that's not the only way you can make money using Airbnb, because like looking back at this, later on as I developed into it, I've actually converted some of my Airbnbs into midterm property rentals, renting to people like traveling nurses month on month at a time. You don't collect the same type of rent that you would, but you also greatly reduce your operating expense by doing so. And in my head, it also reduces the headache that comes with the turnover. And I think that was a much more interesting proposition for me going forward. So for me now, I would say I would focus on midterm, because I am the kind of I am now trying to build a family and doing that, and but I still have the hustle in me to do on something that needs mediocre turnover. But if you're somebody that says, hey, I just want to maximize my return, short term is definitely the way to go.
Hey, Tom, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Hey, on location, I was talking to an investor about doing an Airbnb. He mentioned it to me that it was something he was considering. And a property I sent to him was in a development, which had, of course, bylaws and, an association. And I was wondering if you have any particular advice or thoughts about, in terms of location, where to get, whether or not to get a property that's in a development and understanding those bylaws or not, or do you prefer to do something, single family that's detached, or what?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Like initially, when my very first Airbnb was a studio in downtown Chicago, and despite them at that time, like Airbnb was still up and rising and wasn't in any bylaws or in any HOAs, right? And so it was sort of like a gray area that I was operating in. And I'll tell you this, like ultimately, Airbnb was, even though it was legalized in Chicago, a lot of high rises banned Airbnb. And as a result, I had to sell 2 of my units as a result of it. I would say, like, you would first, if the HOA allows like short-term rentals, like really do your due diligence, try and find out what those terms are for running an Airbnb. Because I have found that some townhomes allow it, given that you like live in it for like 1 year, or you have to like live in it for a certain amount of days throughout the year. But it's also based on relationship, right? But generally, I would say personally, like towards, I would say, the third year of my operation, I purchased a duplex, and it was much more simpler not having to deal with an HOA, because you basically, no one can tell you what to do except for the city, which I will get into later on, because cities is also another thing you need to consider with Airbnb, because like here on the East Coast, New York City is notorious for shutting down Airbnbs, whereas right across the river in New Jersey, like Jersey City, very open to Airbnb. So you just want to be careful and read up into and really do your research into like your municipality rules, in addition to like, the HOA and bylaws.
Yeah, thanks.
Great question. Yeah. The third thing I wished I had known before I jumped into my first Airbnb was that there is this company called AirDNA, and you can buy, if there is a particular area, say you want to do Airbnb in Allentown, right? You can go into AirDNA, and there are 2 types of reports you can get. There is a zip code package where you put in the zip code that you're interested in Airbnb, and it'll give you like an average of like what a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom does in terms of occupancy rate, the price, and generally seasonality, because that is so important, especially us being in the Northeast. Like you're gonna see that, especially when I was in Chicago, like, high tide is starting from March all the way to September, and then from September to like February, it's starting to, the occupancy rate is going to drop. And so you want to keep that in mind when you're doing this, because it has a big implication on how much you make. And AirDNA is pretty accurate. I highly recommend that you do the monthly data package, which it's expensive. It's $500 a month, but you can, like, the difference between that and like the zip code package is like 100, 150 bucks. But it only gives you a report of just the zip code. But like within Allentown, right? Like block by block, like the attractiveness of an area can change drastically. If you go with the monthly, like it's a very real time sort of like real time reporting tool. You can drill down to the exact street, like, and figure out, hey, on this particular address, like what is something similar to what I'm trying to do, like performing. And you can quickly figure out real quick, like, hey, on average, it's going to generate like, $40,000-$60,000 revenue. And it can also give you expectations in terms of what your operating expenses are, and taxes. So I highly recommend using that. And something that sometimes blows over people's thought is just using Airbnb. Like, hey, just go on to Airbnb, plug in a time, the room, the rates, and see what people in your area are charging. Like that's also a really good barometer of like how much money they're making, right? And then the fourth thing, I did not consider this at all when I started, but amenities is huge to people who use use Airbnb. They want blow dryers, they want like cooking ware, ironing boards. Generally speaking, the more amenities that you advertise on your listing, the more attractive it is. And so I highly recommend, and it's super cheap to get, guys. Like you can just go onto Facebook Marketplace, look for someone who's like doing a sellout, right? Or whose property's getting condemned, and just run in there and just like buy something for $1, you know? Like you'll be surprised. And then, and the last thing is really consider your team. You're gonna need a team. If you're doing one, you can totally do it on your own. Like Ryan, I know you said that you're living in a duplex right now. Like you could totally turn your other room, if you will, into an Airbnb, and you could probably run it on your own, right? But then let's say you start acquiring 2, 3, 4. You're gonna need one, a cleaning lady for sure, a cleaning person, cleaning man, lady, you know what I'm saying. You might need a property manager, and you're definitely gonna need a handyman. If you're not handy yourself, like myself, like I had a dedicated handyman that was ready to go like 24/7. And that really helped because you are going to get calls in the middle of the night. I guarantee you this, if you do this, you're gonna get calls at 2 a.m. in the morning, gets locked out. 3 a.m. in the morning, heat doesn't work. 4 in the morning, like, I don't know, like toilets clogged. You're gonna get these calls. And so having like a handyman nearby is super helpful. I happen to got lucky where you might consider this too, like, when I signed up with a cleaning lady, I found one that was really good. And basically I locked her in at a discounted rate. And I said, hey, at that time I had 4 locations. And I said, if you would do all 4, she would give me a discount. And not only that, but she would also be my property manager. So it was kind of a win-win situation for me because like she was a person that could get to those people for lockouts and stuff like that. And in addition, like she wouldn't charge me like $150. She'd be like, hey, how about $100? But you get all 4 properties, right? So it kind of worked out that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Genius.
Any questions on this part before we get into the numbers?
I have one really quick, Tom.
Yeah.
Location and strategy. In a big city like Chicago, you have a lot of people going into and out of the city, and the strategy can be a few different things. In a more rural area, let's say, not to say like Allentown City or Bethlehem like that is a Airbnb destination, but if you have guys, this area, the Poconos are very common, or homes like that, remote living. When you're picking locations, other than the municipal laws, is there anything else that you would look for? Like, I didn't realize the kind of stuff that people actually search for Airbnb to sleep at. Like, it blows my mind that people rent these places. But is there any type of niche that you found other than the city high-rise living that guys on the call could think about? What's like a different type of location that people don't usually think about?
Yeah, I have 2 buddies in Chicago that's still Airbnb. And here are some interesting things that I've learned through them, actually. I've never tested myself, so I'm only speaking from what they've told me. But one is that my friend had a Airbnb in this near Gary, Indiana. Not a fun town, to be in, not necessarily a destination place. But the interesting thing was his Airbnb happened to be near a hospital. And so he attracted a ton of traveling nurses. It's to the point where actually he's worked a deal with the hospital, and he is just a dedicated hospital, like temp housing for them, which is very interesting because traveling nurses are, by the way, are the best tenants. They are never there. They pay and because the hospital comps their living, like they will pay any amount, really, like for a furnished place with flexible lease terms, right? Like that's what they're looking for. And so like I highly recommend, like in Allentown, I know there's a lot of hospitals there. Allentown, not to knock on Allentown, it doesn't, I never heard about it growing up around New Jersey. So I don't know how hot it is as a travel destination, but I see a ton of hospitals there. That could be an option for an Airbnb.
It's huge. Lots of healthcare here,
Yeah.
and it's
Healthcare,
growing rapidly.
that's great. That's great. I'll be honest with you. If I can just do Airbnbs for traveling nurses, that would be my strategy. That honestly, if I tell you God honest truth, like that's my ideal strategy. Just work towards the healthcare industry.
There are a few guys that John and I are working with that have that exact motive as investors. They're not on the call, but they're full time. One guy's a emergency room physician, and he just sinks his money into these things, and they just want to put it to work, and he has it managed. But that midterm rental to traveling nurses is a massive business in this area.
Yeah,
something to consider.
Yeah, there's a website called furnishfinder.com, and they work particularly with traveling nurses and traveling consultants. So like you guys can, we posted our listing on there before and had some good success like finding traveling nurses that way. And yeah, so, but I'm sure if you just Google traveling nurses housing, I'm sure there's a ton of websites for it.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Yep. And per your request, Matt, you asked me for some pictures, but so this is some of the actual pictures from our Airbnb from back in the day. Like on the left-hand side, those left two, those were my studio in downtown Chicago. That was my rock star. When I say rock star, I mean like, I know I told you guys before, like the high rises didn't allow Airbnb. So here's a funny story. I got fined 3 times from this high rise, and like the cash flow on this thing was so great. I was kind of like, I'm just gonna keep paying off this fine until like, until I got a cease and desist letter. Then I was like, okay, I can't, you know what I mean? Like, but if you can find, I mean, it's gonna be impossible to find like a high rise in any major city that will support Airbnb. Unfortunately, if you do find one, good for you. But that would be the most ideal way to go. But otherwise, if you can find a multi or something that you can totally control in downtown, that would be the most ideal, right? And then on the right-hand side, I had a duplex. And so the first floor was a 2-bed, 1-bath, and then the top floor was a 3-bed, 1-bath. And I'm going to share with you some of the results from my time running those. The left-hand side is an average of the 2 studios that I had in downtown Chicago. And you're going to see that had the best return. Like the studio, forget the 1-bed, 1-bath, because 1-bed, 1-bath from a purchasing standpoint, right, was about 150K more than a studio. But yet they will generate you. This is why like AirDNA was so important to this, right? So vital to this. It basically told me that it didn't matter if it was a studio or 1-bedroom, like they were going to get the same rate, but like the studio was going to cost 100K less to acquire. So for me, like my cash on cash return, like every year was 50% plus, which is it was like freaking insane. Like, and especially since the fact that like the studio that I had was near where Lollapalooza was being held. And so like that studio was like during like music fest and stuff like that. I mean, like I was charging, I'll be honest with you, 250 was conservative. I charged as high as like $500 a night for during Lollapalooza weekend. And for like during the marathon a weekend too, like you can get some pretty insane rates like during that weekend. But I want to show you a more conservative estimate because like that was 99 to 250 is more realistic to what I'm getting like 99 from Monday to like Friday, Monday to Thursday, Friday to Sunday, you're looking at closer to 200 to 250 a night. And then something big that you guys should consider when doing this, and every city is different, is the Airbnb tax. This got implemented like my 4th year of doing this. And the city of Chicago, being the greedy bastards that they are, were like, hey, so many people are making money on this. We got to find a way to claw some of that back. And so, back in like 2018, they instilled a Airbnb tax. So 10% of my top of my growth went straight to their pockets, and Airbnb will withhold that. So just something to consider. That's just Chicago specific. Like, you know, I doubt it's that high for any other municipalities, but just check, like, you know, it's going to be different for every city and state. And Airbnb charges a 3% service fee for every booking. And that's on the top. So keep that in mind as well. And they do charge your guests a 14% service fee. So even though like you may not hit that, just keep that in mind. Like when you're pricing your rooms, Airbnb is actually going to put another markup on top of that, which will ineffectually affect, like, you know, your demand to some degree. My worst performing one, and this is because of location, guys. So like, I can't say the 2-bed 1-bath is not a good play, but it was my worst play because it was, and this is part of the duplex that I purchased like on West Side Chicago, and it was a 10 block from the nearest train station. And I always look back and shot myself in the foot and go, I really wish like I had just purchased something like much closer, because like the difference in return could have been night and day. So you can see the occupancy rate on a 2-bed 1-bath was much lower than my 3-bed. But I did learn a lot of good things though. I learned that when you're going multi, more rooms are good. So my 3-bed 1-bath was in much higher demand. I had much higher occupancy rate than my 2-bed. And I attracted a lot more families that way. And so it was interesting to figure that out, and you get a higher rate out of it too. So, and because of like the dynamics of a multi, you essentially, you know, spend the same between the 2-bed and 3-bath, but it's a lower percent of sales, you know, in the long run. So I would say like if you're going the multi route, you know, the more rooms the better. But if you're like downtown, dude, the studio was definitely like the way to go. No need to get like a 1-bed. And the cap rates might surprise you guys, because like I remember jumping into this thing. Airbnb was advertising like cap rates are like 20-30%. But the truth is, guys, like it really depends on a lot of things, like how well you run your team, right? It really depends on like, are your tenants just leaving the AC blasting like, you know, 24/7, which they do, like, and then eventually I had to install a Nest and all that stuff to control that. There's a lot of things that, you know, you can do to reduce your, you know, operating expenses, but it was the biggest chunk. I would just estimate that like, hey, of your revenue, 50% of that is going to go towards, is going to end up going towards running the place. So, but the interesting thing I thought from doing this whole thing too was just like there was really no downtime in Chicago, even though it's freaking cold. Like really, January, February were the 2 months that I feared the most every year. But once I don't know why, but once March 1st hit, man, like then the bookings start coming like crazy, you know. And then so I would just keep that in mind, like January, February. I tend to look for longer term tenants, and there's options in Airbnb where you can set settings where you say, hey, you know, for these months, I only want bookings of 1 week or more. And that's how we went about doing that, to just ride out the winter and then prepare ourselves essentially for like spring, summer, and fall. And so, and that's it. So I just left my email up there in case you guys want to reach out, have any additional questions after the call, but we can just leave it up to Q&A. And thank you guys for your time. Like, I'm happy to share my experiences. You know, I love like talking to people and just learning about other people's experiences too. And I'm just happy to share what I got for what I have. And hopefully I can continue doing this again. So.
That was awesome. Thank you. When were the purchase price and the operation dates of these properties you shared?
Yep. So for the studio, that purchase price was $165. I put 5% down. I put 5% down, and I think I spent about $1,000 furnishing the place, right? So I took that into consideration for my when determining the cash on cash return. And then so,
Was that a house
and
hack?
I operated that between 2015 to about 2018. So
Did
only
you live there?
I on paper I did.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So you used a low down payment loan to buy it,
Yep. I use
and
a
then you had a
FHA.
life change event and were able to offset your expenses really quickly.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about the other two?
And then so after this studio, I bought another studio in downtown. And so the first studio was actually on north side of Chicago. When I say north side, I mean it's still downtown, but it's like north of the river. But it was right across the street from a club. And I was kind of like, perfect. Like the club and bars are like right there. So and it's right next to a train station. So it's perfect. I bought another place just to diversify on the south. When I say south side, I mean south of the river, not the south side you hear on the news, but like that was, and that was like right by where like the they call it South Loop, and it's right by the area where they hold Lollapalooza, like that stadium area. And so that was great. The 2-bed and the 3-bed, the duplex I got was west of Chicago. The 2-bed, 1-bath, I got that in 2017 and operated that till almost to the end of 2019 before I sold it. And the first floor was a 2-bed, 1-bath. Second floor was a 3-bed, 1-bath. And so, and the numbers I'm showing you here, like basically like I had one expense for the total building, but I just split it evenly. And the purchase price for that was $560. And I put 10% down. And I put about, I would say about 40 to 50K in renovations and furnishing. So all in, I was about 100K in. But I mean, it was still delivering like return, but it was lower than what I was expecting, because I was like, I was flying high with the studio, and then I was kind of like, awesome, let's see what, but again, going back to location, the location wasn't super ideal. But I was still, even if it wasn't super ideal, I was still able to get it to work. So,
That's awesome. So these were all 5-6 years ago, and to current. When was your last one that you sold? You don't have any of these right now, do you?
Nope. So just full disclosure, I sold them all. The studios I sold back in like 2018, and then the multiplex, the duplex I sold back in the end of 2019. And so I'm starting fresh. And just so you know, I'm originally from New Jersey. So I was doing long distance with my girlfriend. I'm going too much detail, but like long story short, I moved back in 2018, New Jersey, and I was actually still operating the Airbnb from New Jersey. And that was really tough. So I do not recommend you doing Airbnb out of state. But it was because I had a team that I felt like I could possibly like get it through. But after a year of doing that, I was like, and then after, we were expecting a little boy. I said, okay, like I couldn't take it anymore. So I eventually sold it. And now I'm working with Matt to just find me a good, healthy multiplex in Allentown, if he can find one. And I would like to just go conventional. But although I like talking about one more thing that I'm particularly looking at, especially in New Jersey, right? It's like co-living. It's something I have heard about. It's nothing like new, honestly. It's just really just buying a single family, furnishing it, and renting out each room individually. And people have, had success getting above market rent by doing it that way versus like renting it to a whole family. And so like, I'm particularly like, there are other ways to arbitrage the market. And I have heard stories of people getting a lot of success doing that. If you guys listen to Bigger Pockets on podcasts, like you might have heard like, I forgot which episode it was, but there was one like karate instructor. He has like 6 of these like co-living like situation down in like North Carolina. And he was just like, it was crazy. He has like 6 bedrooms, all rented out to different people, different walks of life. And they just somehow coexist under one roof. It sounds crazy, but like it works. So yeah, so there's an opportunity there I want to share too. I haven't tried it myself, but like if something presents itself, like I might try that as well. So
The traditional 20% down, buy a house, rent it. It's amazing how that's not the standard anymore. There's so many different variables. And if you could be the one to find that,
yeah.
and trailblazers are the ones that either sink or make the profit. You can have a pretty
Absolutely.
interesting scenario here. That's awesome, dude.
Yep.
What kind of questions you guys got for Tom? This is a ton of awesome and very different information than we're used to. This is really, really cool. Anybody?
Or cool. Maybe I just hit it out of the park. Like,
Yeah,
all the questions are asked.
well,
great.
with the presentations, the decks are very, very nice, and having the graphics, it certainly helps. And especially with this group, you get guys with tons of experience and guys are just trying to get into it. Having an option like this is super important. What's some advice you would give to somebody who's just starting off? In general, doesn't have to be short-term rental, midterm. You're brand new to this, and you know the market, regardless of where you're looking. The economy is a huge concern. What's some advice you have for guys?
Yeah, that I challenge you guys to figure out what, going back to this thing here, the strategy, like really figuring out what good means to you guys. Meaning, like, for me, like, for example, right, like I realized over the years that for me, what good means to me is I would just, for each property I own, if I can just net $1,000 out of each unit a month. It might be trouble nowadays with interest rates and all that, but like that was, that's really what good means to me. And then once you know that, like, you just basically, then it becomes clear like how to, structure your investments, or like how to deal with investments going forward. Because like I look at real estate more like a dividend than like an asset, because I just look at it as like, hey, with this, can it help me pay off my car? Can it help pay for my diapers? Right? Like, can it, like, and I just look at it as in that light. And I think that, for me, it's more about just cash return. But for other players, they're more about the rate. They care more about the depreciation or what have you, and that's fine too. It's all about just figuring out, like, hey, really figure out what it is you want to accomplish first before like jumping into this. Because like this Airbnb, I do recommend to people, and I still do because it worked for me. However, I do say, like, there's error warning, right? Like it takes one really bad apple to kind of ruin your day, and that's kind of what happened to me. So I guess I'll share that other story that I shared with you, Matt. It's like, I think you guys need to see the bad side of things. Was like, this was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, right? Like I had a couple kids, but they came off as adults, obviously, on their profile, right? And they made a fake profile, and that's just going to happen. And they found a loophole where they booked my place without having to actually pay for it. Because the thing is, Airbnb doesn't release their money until they actually check in. But the weird thing is, they give them the check-in instruction before they release the payment. So what they did was, all you have to do is just basically, once they get the check-in instruction, they just call their credit card company, cancel, tell them it's lost or stolen, whatever like that, and they're unable to send the funds over, but they have access to the unit. And basically, I got a call from the cops at like 3 a.m. in the morning one day, and they trashed the place. They broke the dining table. There was beer all over all the beds. Smelled like weed. There was definitely other weird stuff going on there. And the cops told me when they got there were like 20 underage kids there, right? And they just all scattered. And not only did you lose the money for that weekend, that's not the bad part. The bad part is I had to cancel a whole month's worth of booking because I had to fix everything that they broke, and it took Airbnb 6 months for their insurance, insurance policy to finally pay me back for the damages. And so that And then on top of that, obviously, like, you know, I had a 1-year-old kid. Actually, he was a 1-month-old kid and he was crying. I'm not getting any sleep. So that's personal part of it. I was also compounding my decision for doing that. And so just so you guys know, like, you know, but I will say this, like less than 5% are bad. I would say 95% of my tenants were awesome. Most are very, and I try to do a good job of screening, you know, for them, but like, you're not going to be perfect. One bad apple will get through, and you guys should just be prepared for that. You know, like, and there are ways you can be prepared for that. You can have cameras, you can have smoke detectors. Like, there are ways to prepare for those things. And I didn't have those. You know, I didn't have those precautions. So I just want to put that out there as well. You know, when you're deciding if this is the right thing for you. So yeah.
What kind of protection do you have as the owner to sift? You know, we can do background checks on our tenants for long-term leases, but you don't have a lease. You have an Airbnb contract, essentially. What kind of control do you have over who?
It's
stays
just reviews from other hosts.
Okay.
So like, but it's so easy to fake those. You know, like Airbnb has tried ways to basically try to, you know, create safeguards, if you will, to try to prevent those bad apples from happening. But, you know, anyone with a credit card can create a profile, right? And anyone with credit card can easily like rate other Airbnbers, right? And so, yeah, like I would say I generally try to, you know, you can refuse tenants without reviews, which I've done in the past, right? And and some of them have a link to their Facebook account, and sometimes you can actually check, like, hey, is this a real person? Like, do they have history? What do they look like? You know, what is their background? But the thing is, like, Airbnb is also a very difficult business model to scale. I'll also put that out there. Like, if you're looking for one or two and you just want to rake in cash, like one or two would be like, I think that's very doable, right? I was getting too greedy when I was like, hey, I was trying to push for 5 and 6, but then we're getting to a point where it was like, one, like, you know, I did have a backup cleaning lady. But what I was finding was, like, because these locations are all over the map, right? It is hard to get them from point A to point B. If you have a triplex or a fourplex, honestly, if you have a fourplex, like in like an ideal location, that in my head would be like the ideal Airbnb, because like you can have the cleaning lady only stay in one spot, right? And do the cleaning. It's really when they're like scattered all about, it makes it very difficult to scale. Because when you have multiple cleaning ladies, each cleaning lady is going to be, they have different quality. You would have a quality control issues. You're going to run into that because, like, if they're running from one place and have to get to another to finish before the next check-in, you know, she's going to be rushing and all that stuff. There's going to be, you know, it's going to get more difficult to scale the more you bring on. And it's not saying you can't do it. You can definitely do it when you have it systematized and organized. But this is why hotels are so much better ran, right? Because it's all housed in one building. So I'll just put that out there as well.
That's awesome advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question really quick?
Yeah.
What was the typical, how long did the typical tenant stay in your Airbnb? And could you require that they have to spend a certain amount of time in order to reserve the Airbnb?
What I did was, for the studios, I required them. I didn't have a set time, like they could stay. They could stay one night if they wanted to, but they had to book more than 48. You can set like how far in advance they can book, because like if they're trying to book like, you know, an hour before they're trying to check in, like I would the system, you can set it so it'll automatically refuse their, you know, application, because those are the guys that are the ones who are your bad apples usually, right? They're just like, hey, let's just go to a place. We need a place to party, you know, but not at our place. Those are the usual ones. For my 2-bedroom, which I had lower occupancy, I'll be honest with you, like I got a little desperate during the winter times, right? And so that's kind of where I found myself in trouble, because I was getting lax in terms of like who I was letting in, because I was just trying to hit my numbers, right?
Mhm.
And I'll be honest with you, it's like I wish, looking back, I didn't take some because I was just trying to hit a number. I wish I was just more disciplined and said, like, you know what, this guy or this girl looks shady, like just refuse it. I'll just take a loss this month. I'll just make it up next month, because like the loss that you will incur from a bad apple is going to be greater than whatever income you're going to try, which was like, honestly, it was like 50, $60 a night. Right. So it was like, okay. Yeah. So that's what I would say about that.
Okay, so it was basically like, depending upon what they were renting it for, they would rent it for various amounts of time. So there wasn't really like a typical time frame that the
Yeah.
average person would. Okay.
Yeah. And Airbnb is very good about, like, you can set a lot of different rules,
Mhm.
which is cool. You can set it like, you only take bookings for 7 days or less. I've actually done where I've like only allowed bookings for 30 days or more, and that's how I ultimately decided to fill my winter months. Was I was looking for those longer term, and you'll be surprised. It wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be, because I just decided to take a gamble. It's kind of like, hey, January, February's coming. I would purposely set those specific times as 30-day plus check-ins, starting in like, 3 months earlier. So like starting in like, let's say November. So you can actually do this way in advance, right? And set a rule that way. It can get pretty intricate. So like, that's the cool thing about the application. They've gotten very advanced with like what and how you want to set it to your liking.
All right, thanks, Tom. That's very helpful.
Yep, anytime.
Tom, I have another quick question if nobody else does.
Yep,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I do.
Oh, Ken, go ahead.
How did you deal with, how did you deal with when you had the bad apples? How did you deal with the neighbors in the area when all that was going on?
Luckily,
Did you have any issues with neighbors?
I'm getting feedback on my end. I don't know if you guys hear it. But the neighbors I didn't have any issues with. Again, if you own your your multi-unit, that's why I prefer it if you just own a multi or a single family home or what have you. Generally, the neighbors can complain, but if your municipality allows for Airbnb, I mean, they're hard pressed in trying to shut you down, because in Chicago, like in Chicago, it's actually gotten pretty formalized. So in order to operate Airbnb, you had to register with the it was called like the business consumers. So it was a basic department that they created where you had to get a license. So you had to apply for Airbnb license. It was like $125 a year. And then once you're registered with the city and you're in certain zones that the city says you can Airbnb, like the neighbors can't touch you, basically. So there are safeguards to make sure that your business can stay in operation. So you just have to look into Allentown. Like I'm sure Allentown has any major city, I would think, like they would probably have some sort of say in what you can or cannot do with Airbnb.
One of the things that we
All right,
saw in
thank
this
you.
area, Tom,
No problem.
was there's communities, especially up in the Poconos, usually surrounding lakes or other attractions, and there's a huge push, at least in this part of Pennsylvania, for Airbnbs to be gone by local property owners, other people in the communities, and they're putting in requirements, and people are getting voted to the councils of these communities that are essentially ending Airbnb businesses for certain groups. And we know several people who've bought properties in certain communities with the intent on Airbnb in the future, and now they can't. And there's a lot of things being sold off with the intent of Airbnb that never actually happened. So it's kind of a landscape change for people with that business model. So if anybody on the call, anybody listening in the future looks to get into this, it is a very awesome opportunity, but you really need to be in tune with the local government, because one day your cash flowing asset could be zero. and you might have
Yeah.
to sell it. So unless you're going to get on the board and, convince everyone that's still a good idea, just something to keep in the back of your mind.
No, that's a great point, Matt. Yeah, like that's one of the points I should have put up here. Can you Airbnb it first?
Mhm.
Like look into the laws. Yeah, that's really true.
Can you go back to the page, the 3 properties with the return data?
Yep.
I want to ask one more question. If nobody else has anything, I want Richard to talk about his insurance stuff shortly, but the cap rate and cash on cash. When we're talking about investing in real estate, one of the first questions I have with people is, why are you looking at real estate versus other asset classes? And when we get into the benefits of real estate, obviously there's numerous compared to other asset classes, but cash flow, appreciation, and depreciation combined are mostly the reason people get in. When you have a cash on cash return of north of 15%, that's pretty damn good, regardless of where you are. The same cash invested in any other asset, that would be your investment return. But to your point earlier, you mentioned this, and it kind of stuck in my head. Some people have investment goals that are cash on cash driven. They have investment goals that are cap driven. They have investment goals that are cash flow driven, and that could be very, very different for every investor. And I'm going to pick on Ryan here in the call here. When we were looking for his duplex to house hack, we needed something that was going to have a cash flow at the end of the day of between -500 and 0, because to Ryan, that was a positive 1,000 to positive 500. So if you look at these assets, they're not always what they appear to be on paper, because John and I are working with some other clients right now who are in a similar position to you, Tom, where they're just looking to put the money somewhere to get a average return with some positive cash flow. They have no preference if it's $1 in the green or 300 in the green.
Mhm.
The difference is it's not another asset class. It's not Bitcoin or the stock market.
Yep.
So every investor's preferences are going to be different. And it's important that you guys know, getting into this, what your tolerances are and what your returns are. I know we were talking to another investor last week that he will not, he's a mortgage originator, and he will not buy a piece of real estate unless its cash on cash return is greater than 20%. And that's just his goal, and he'll wait until he finds something, but when he does, he buys it outright. And it's pretty impressive. But this screen kind of stuck out at me. These numbers are all great, but they might be different for other people. So in this area, you're lucky to see properties being listed at more than a 6 cap, because the deals are greater the higher the cap rate go, right? And it's an inverse formula for that. Your cash flow per door is, depending on what you do, $100 to $200 a door, and your price per door is going to be between 110 and 130 in this area at this time. So whatever that looks like for people, those are all on market deals. Whatever your investment returns and goals are, it doesn't matter what the other person is doing, as long as it's what you like and what's better for your situation at all. That's all that matters.
Exactly. Well said, Matt.
This is a pretty cool demonstration of that here. Even though these numbers are 5 years old, it is still possible. And if you hustle and you find that studio apartment and you get it off market, you do some door knocking and you can get a cash on cash of 54%, it happens. But it's not going to happen if you call up a real estate agent and say, hey, what's in the MLS? Let's go find the deal. You likely got this deal either grossly underpriced or in some type of special circumstance, right? Or is it because you only put 5% down because you lived in it?
No, it was, I found a studio. For some reason, it was been sitting on the market, because that's the thing. No one wants to buy studios in Chicago. Everyone wants the 1-bed. And so it was a great opportunity. Again, that I was telling you guys about arbitrage, right? It's like, hey, there's all these studios on the market sitting for 60 days plus, and they're taking it down. But it was just perfect. Like, that aligned with what I was trying to do. And it just kind of, Yeah, it was like rocket fuel, man. I wish it wasn't so exciting in the beginning. I'll be honest with you, because like you get into that rush really quick. You know, when you start seeing the numbers come in, you're just kind of like, holy shit, let's keep going, right? And then the multiplex was sort of the break for me, right? It was just like, hey, this it's not all going to be good, right? Like there's going to be ebbs and flows. Especially when I got the cease and desist letter from from the high rise, then that was like, the party's over, guys. You know, like that's it. But man, you know, it's you just keep looking, right? You just keep open minded. You just keep learning. Like again, I keep telling people I'm happy to share what I know, but I feel like I just know so I feel like there's so much more to learn out there. That's the thing about real estate. Every time listening to like a podcast on Bigger Pockets, I'm like, holy crap, this guy's doing this guy's trying this. It really is so different, right? From like city to city. And so like I couldn't tell you these are the numbers you're gonna get if you play in Allentown, but like I will say that overall, would I recommend Airbnb to somebody who was thinking about getting into real estate? I would. If you have the time and the patience to deal with it, and you have a little bit of thick skin to deal with some bad apples, I still think the upside is totally worth the headache. Like I'll just say that up front, right? Like I'll be honest, if I wasn't starting a family or trying to build a bigger family, I would still be doing Airbnb right now. But because my priorities have changed, right? Like my strategies changed, right? I can't be expecting 50% cash on cash. Like I'm going to try to hopefully, I'm hoping for like just net at the end of the day, like $500, $1,000. We'll find it, Matt. I know we're gonna find it, but that would to me would be like I'm happy. Like
Start looking at 90+ day on market. There's deals out there.
yeah.
The pretty turnkey stuff is not where you get these kind of returns. Everybody else is looking for them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions for Tom before we kind of turn this over to Richard to talk about his clue report?
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Awesome.
But hey, thanks for lending me the floor. And
Yeah, that was great, Tom.
Fantastic.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
Anytime, guys.
I would say that if you don't have a penchant for, if you're having trouble managing your current rentals, then this is probably not where you want to go. If you don't like management, you don't like having to interface with all the aspects of management, but it's good practice too, though. You get to learn how to manage a property in a very dynamic sense. And I think that that's an important skill to learn, something that we all need to know, because we tend to think about the profit that we're going to make on the deal, but we don't think about the capital expenditures or the operational expenditures that have to take place. And that's usually what eats an investor up, is the capex or the opex is two numbers that are usually under estimated by most investors, especially new investors, I would say. Wouldn't you agree, Matt?
100%. 100%. The ones, and we learned the hard way, a few of the slam dunks that we had in the beginning, got the big head, couldn't get out the door. Oh, this is the best thing in the world. Nope. The roof comes, the big issues come, and you're absolutely right, Richard. The deferred maintenance when you're buying properties, whether it be on market or unlisted, you have to plan for stuff. But over plan and underperform, you'll have you might still have issues, but
right,
your money in the savings account and not have any problems either. So we're all in this to make a little bit. So that's a good point.
Right. Hey, well, I won't keep everybody on much longer here. I just got a short blurb here. I just want to talk to you a little bit about what a clue report is. And I'll just share this real quick. You can kind of see, can you guys see this page? Yeah.
It's up down, yeah.
Yeah. So let me describe a little bit what this is and give you a reference to compare. Everyone's familiar with the credit report, and and how that's used to with a score to determine your ability to repay a debt, okay, or service a debt with a bank or whoever is lending you money. The credit report falls under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. There's also another report, which you see here is called a clue report. This is my clue auto report. This is just a header page. I won't show much of it, but you can see here that it stands for, it's an acronym standing for the Comprehensive Loss Underwriting Exchange. And basically it's a loss history. You get in a car accident, you have a claim on your house, it ends up in this report. And this is the report that insurance companies draw from in order to determine your insurability, okay? It does require maintenance as much as, maybe not as much as your credit report, but you definitely want to look at your clue report, because while it suggests that the report is only, 7 years worth of information, they have stuff in here. I'm 58. They have stuff in here from when I would live in California at 22. Okay, so a
They had
lot of
computers back
information
then?
is, huh?
They had computers back then?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I was making a joke. I said they had
Oh, you were
computers
joking?
back then.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. It was garbled, so we didn't get
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Lost
So,
opportunity, Matt.
Your clue report comes from LexisNexis. You can see here, and the way you have to get it is just you go to LexisNexis's website and you request it. They will then subsequently send you a letter that contains something like this. It'll contain a consumer number, a case number, and then what they'll do is they'll give you a link to accessing your report. And then from that link, it'll have a pen that you'll fill in, and then it'll give you your report, okay? That's basically how it works. And when you file a dispute with a entry on your clue report, like I had to do, let me tell you why I came into this knowledge, okay? And this is why it was important to me. We shop our insurances periodically, and we're looking at getting some newer or some better homeowners insurance. Go to a few sites, fill out the forms, they give you a quote. I got a quote that was like twice what I'm currently paying. I was like, what is this? Clearly a mistake, right? Eventually, though, I got on the phone with one of the prospective insurers, and they told me that I had a claim on a property in Colorado last year in September. And I was like, no, I don't, because I don't own any property in Colorado and never have, actually. And according to this report, I did, and there was a homeowner's claim on it, and that's why my rates were so high. So I had to get this report and then dispute it in order to get the information removed. And it runs just like a credit entry on your credit report, where it takes 30 days, they investigate all that, and it gets corrected or it comes off or what have you, okay? This is basically what the report contains: your identification records, any names that you've used, aliases, things like that. Address characteristics record is your addresses that you lived at. Like I say, they have addresses for me that go way, way back to, when I lived in California. Phone records, any phone numbers you've had, business association records. They got my pilot's, license record in there. Any professional licenses that you have now. I thought that it would show my real estate license in this, and it did not. So for whatever reason, it didn't show that I was a real estate agent. And then online marketing records, anything that you've signed up to get, any lists and things that you're on is on here. Property deed records, and this is for any properties that you've bought and sold. My report, you can see, is 138 pages. So you can imagine, if you're an investor, your report's going to be about the same or more. And then, of course, insurance policies, automobile, department, driver, all your tickets that you've ever gotten are going to be on here. And then anyone that inquired as to your report. So So this is something that I think that everybody needs to understand and, know that it's out there. I don't think it requires the level of maintenance that a credit report does, but it does require some maintenance. So you're entitled to, under the FCRA, to get this report at least once a year for free. And it was pretty straightforward. Now, I don't like the fact that they send you via snail mail this letter that then you have to go in and click a link. So basically, this is what the steps are. You go on the website, lexusnexus.com, and you fill out a form. They send you via snail mail this letter that you get, which you then have to type in this link to get your report. So that's the process. And then after you put that in, and then you get all this information here, and then, then if you want to dispute something, you have to send an email to them of what you want to dispute. It is better to give them a call. I sent an email per their instructions, and didn't get any response to it or anything back from it. Double checked to make sure the address was right and all that. Everything was okay. But I ended up having to call and actually talk to someone. And in fact, the funny thing is I talked to 3 people who were all named Ray. So that was a little unusual for me. But that's it, guys. That's all I pretty much had for you. I wanted to let you know that exists. Make sure you take a look at it and at your own report if you own property or if you had any claims. This will definitely affect your insurability if you're if erroneous information showed up. So, all right.
That's really easy. I just literally did it as you were talking, Richard. It took 1 minute.
Yeah.
And it's just like your freecreditreport.com that you get one free credit report every year. If you're going to be doing anything in real estate and looking at insurability, when you called me the other day and told me about that, is this must be the back end that the insurance companies use to talk to you or to survey you, because your information is out there every time you swipe a card or open an account, especially with insurance. This is a big deal, and insurance is not getting cheaper. So thanks for that, Richard. That's awesome.
Yeah, sure.
And Rich, that's not just for like property insurance, right? That's like including auto,
right?
All that stuff. Okay.
Yeah, it's auto. There's basically 2 reports in it. One is your consumer. It's called I think a consumer disclosure report, a CDR, which contains all of your information of where you live, phone numbers you've used, and that sort of information. And then there's the clue report, which is more along the lines of insurances, like your auto insurance, homeowners insurance. If you have umbrella policies like I do, you're gonna see all of that there. And in my case, there was another person. Actually, it was a person with a similar name to my wife, because when you're married, her stuff is going to show up on your report and your stuff is going to show up on her report. And in our case, we had a situation where someone with a similar name to my wife had a property in Colorado, and they had a claim, and Safeco Insurance reported it to LexusNexus, and it ended up on my clue report. So I have to go and I have to deal with that. And, it's a pain. It's annoying more than anything, but it's something that you just have to keep an eye on.
I just sent the link to order that in the chat. So you have it there. You should just be able to click it. I'll bring you to the hyperlink. Tom, I forgot to ask you, put up on your slideshow. Are you okay if we share your contact information with people? If they have any questions, they can reach out to you.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Awesome.
I'll put it up. Is this my screen showing?
It is. Well, it was.
What the heck? Sorry, I'm more used to Teams, not so much with Zoom. What the? No, there it is. So yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn or you can find me on Gmail. Either way.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tom. Anybody else
Hey,
have
no, thank you guys for having me.
anybody else have any questions or follow-up questions to the stuff we had today? Is it possible? We are
Everyone's
down to
hungry.
10 minutes. Heck yeah.
Everybody's hungry, yes.
I love it. This 90
Thanks,
minute
everybody,
show,
for
perfect.
joining.
Yeah, guys, thanks for joining. We'll have it up on YouTube next week. Ryan's been doing a good job, so I appreciate everybody's time.
Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it. Have a good night.